Hey everybody, it's Jacob here. And in today's video, I just wanted to kind of have a discussion around entitlements. This video is not really meant to, teach you anything per se, but kind of just to get you thinking about entitlements and actually, hopefully, maybe along the way, give you a better understanding of entitlements in Cadence, because I think it's a bit confusing if you're a beginner. And so I think maybe talking about some concepts around it will be helpful. So, entitlements are a new mechanism in Cadence, and they're vastly changing how access control is handled. I won't really go into how access control is handled in the past. I think it's more important to talk about entitlements now. Um, so basically, the way that things are handled are, we have these things called entitlements, and you can define any number of entitlements you want. Like we can have owner one, we could have owner two, owner, three. We could have another one called Jacob. You can define an infinite number of entitlements, but each entitlement really represents, it's almost like a key. It's like a key that you can use to unlock a certain function or a variable. And so when we look at these two resources that I've defined here, we have an NFT resource and a collection resource. We have some functions in here that we don't want to be called by the public, right? Let's say this NFT has a name variable. Let's say this NFT also has vaults inside of it where the NFT can itself store fungible tokens. Well, there are certain things that we want the public to read, and there's certain things that we don't want the public to be able to do, right? So we want the public to be able to read the name, because who cares, right? I mean, maybe there's some world where you don't want that to happen, but let's say read name, right? So that's access all. Now, the ability to change a name, that should only really be done by the owner, right? And withdraw tokens, that should only be able to be done by the owner, right? And so that's where, we kind of view entitlements almost as like the subject, right? Of like who is actually, the person that should be handling this type of thing, right? So in this case, we want the owner of the NFT to be the one that is changing the name or withdrawing the tokens. And so we put owner on it. Now, similarly, inside of our collection resource, right, let's say we have a bunch of NFTs in here, right, that just maps like, the ID of the NFT to the NFT itself. Same sort of scenario, right, where we have deposit function where we want anyone to be able to deposit to our collection because, well, if you want to send me an NFT, go ahead and do that, right? But we only want the owner to be able to withdraw, right? And so it's tricky with entitlements because there's really no correct answer. Like, is this the correct way of handling entitlements? Sure, I actually think it's correct, right? This is like a good way of handling entitlements. You have one entitlement called owner, and any time in any resource or any function in this contract that you only want the owner of that resource to be able to call, you put owner on it, right? And that makes sense. But the thing is that you can get more and more and more granular, right? And it's not really a bad thing. It's kind of up to you as the contract creator. And this is what this discussion is going to be about, right? Like, what is the correct level of granular access? So we can imagine that we can also have something like, actually, let me describe the problem first. An issue with this is, let's say we have another resource called for fun. I don't know, like, or, I don't know, what's a good name? Stuff. Stuff. And let's say inside of stuff we have let's say access all let an NFT, which is an NFT, and let's say we also have access all let collection, which is a collection. Now I want you to sort of think of the problem here, right? Let's say that we have, and this is like in some function somewhere. Let's say we have like an entitled reference, right, auth owner, and we have a reference to stuff, right? Let's say we have something like this, where we have an authorized owner reference to stuff. In this scenario, what can be a problem is that, and by the way, thanks to Dennis, if you're watching this, for sort of like, making me think about this. If you have an authorized reference to owner and you have a reference to stuff, what can happen is you can go in and get an authorized reference, an authorized owner reference to NFT, right? And then you can access the change name, withdraw tokens, whatever. But, right, you can also at the same time go in and say, okay, I also now have an authorized reference, owner reference to collection. And the issue here is that might not always correlate, right? Like the owner of this NFT, we might not want to be the same owner of this collection, even though they're in the same resource here, right? I meant this to be a resource. So even though they're in the same resource, we might not want these two to be controlled the same way, right? We might want someone to have, let's say, an NFT owner entitlement that can go in and access, let's say, these are both NFT owner, to access NFT owner stuff, but they shouldn't be able to then go in and access stuff on the collection, right? Because let's say now this is like collection owner. If someone had an authorized NFT reference, an authorized NFT owner reference to stuff, they'd be able to go in and access NFT, but not go in and access the collection. Maybe that's what we want, right? And so that's sort of the issue with having a single entitlement called owner, where even though it works really, you might run into a scenario where you don't want to be able to have, if both of these resources are in another resource and you have an authorized reference to the, parent resource, that gives you weird access to both, right? And so you might not want that. And so we can say, okay, you can make the argument and say, okay, you know what? I want entitlement NFT owner, and I want another one called entitlement collection owner, right? And so this sort of is a little bit better, where we have something like this, right? I'm going to comment this out. So now we have a access NFT owner reference to these things and a collection owner reference to withdraw. So that it's a bit more granular, it's a little more descriptive, and it makes a bit more sense, and you prevent any weird scenarios like that. So this is sort of what I have stumbled upon as the best case scenario for entitlements. I think you should view entitlements as a subject, right, as a person, but separate them based on the resource that you're talking about. So in this case, I want the same person to be able to change the name as I want them to be able to withdraw tokens. And so I slap NFT owner on these functions. And let's say there was another field called, the NFT had a description. You wanted to change the description. I would say, slap NFT owner on it and change description, right? But for a different resource for collection, you have a collection owner entitlement. And so then you're able to withdraw. But again, you avoid any scenarios like this. Now, you can take it one step further and say, well, what if I want to be really descriptive? And so this is what the actual Cadence team, in my opinion, has done with a lot of different, built-in entitlements, where they go one step further and they say, you know what? I actually think that not only should there be NFT owner, but there should be something like, a change name, right? Where like instead you have, let's just comment these two out, so I'll bring them back in a second. But let's say access all entitlement change name. And then we have, let's just make a bunch of them here, where we have another one called withdraw tokens. And I'll just remove the description one. And we have another one called withdraw, right? And so in this case, what some people would argue is that you could actually have something like this, where you have a separate entitlement for each action, and you don't view entitlements as the subject, but as the adjective, right? So you view an entitlement as, okay, this function changes the name, so this entitlement should have changed name on it. And that way, you prevent scenarios where, what if you want someone to be able to change the name, but you don't want them to be able to withdraw tokens? But it's kind of weird because in most scenarios, it's the same, right? And so it's really up to you as the contract creator to kind of think about these things and think about who do I want to be interacting with these functions, right? Maybe, one example from Geo, and thanks Geo for this idea, I was talking about this in the Flow Discord, is, what if you have like a resource called DAO, and inside the DAO, you have a bunch of different functions that you want people to be able to do, but only certain people should do certain functions, right? So maybe these people with this entitlement, they should be able to withdraw NFTs, but these people should be able to vote with the NFTs, and these people should be able to stake with the NFTs, right? And there's a bunch of different, actions you can take, but I think that in the majority case, most of the time, you really should think about entitlements as adjectives or as subjects, because it makes it a bit more simplified and it achieves sort of the same purpose, right? Like in this case, if I'm saying to myself, you know what, the person that's going to change the name of this NFT and be able to withdraw tokens, if it's the same owner, then what's the point of separating the access here? Now, I will note, you can kind of do both, where you can say this should be NFT owner or change name, and this could be NFT owner or withdraw tokens. And then down here, this should be collection owner or withdraw. you can do this too, where you kind of get the best of both worlds. I personally think this is overcomplicating it, but I just kind of wanted to present this to you, to sort of think about. If you're curious, what my take on it is, the way that I do things is I have, or so far, my opinion on this will probably change a lot, but I have settled on this, which is like the middle ground, right? Where you kind of have a different entitlement for each resource, but you think about the entitlement as a subject, where it's the person, right? Like you're thinking about who is doing these actions, rather than taking it a step further and thinking of it as adjectives, because I think it's too complicated. And I'm not going too simplified where it's just one owner, because I think you run into weird access. You actually do run into weird access problems with stuff like this. So, anyways, just food for thought. I think that entitlements are not really something where I can make a YouTube video and say this is how you should be doing it. I think it really depends on a case by case basis. But I wanted to make this video because I think it's helpful to just sort of think about how you handle entitlements and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's helpful to get my thoughts on it as well. But anyways, with that being said, if you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask in the Emerald City Discord. That link will be in the description. And enjoy the rest of your day or night or whatever you're doing. So peace out.